warm welcome, everyone, this beautiful evening. On behalf of Pakhuis Spijker and Amsterdam City Rights, my name is Hidayah Nampima, your host tonight. I am the co-founder and developer of Amsterdam City Rights. I connect different groups of undocumented people so that we could know one another. Personally, I am undocumented. I am also an activist for the LGBT community. Our major goal is to provide information to people and also to build networks amongst undocumented people. The major concern is to help and support undocumented people's rights because most of our rights are violated. As the theme for today and the goal for today is how do we achieve dignity for domestic workers. I have a number of guests with me, and I will start with Jessica van Rothenberg via Zoom, who is a member of Social Economic Rad and the policy advisor. Jessica, can you please give us the background of ILO and what does this theme for tonight mean to you?
Well, the ILO Convention 189 was a very historical moment, the adoption of the convention. It was the first international standard to recognize the value and importance of the informal economy and the value of domestic work for society. And prior to 2011, ITUC, it's the International Trade Union Confederation, campaigned for an ILO convention on domestic work for several reasons. One is that domestic workers, mainly women and mainly migrant workers, were very vulnerable and working under very poor and precarious conditions and low wages. But also that domestic work is vital for the economy and it enables other people to work. But prior to 2011, there was no international standard on domestic work. There were some resolutions, but there was no international law, no international standard for it. So when the ILO Convention was adopted, I think for me and for my colleagues from FNV and also the domestic workers who supported the campaign for the ILO Convention were very moved and touched that finally the recognition of in the informal economy and the value of the informal economy was recognized by the international community. And the ILO Convention does a lot. It formalizes domestic work. It says that domestic work is work such as every other work is. And it says that domestic workers must have the same basic labor rights as those available to other workers, which include basic things like the access to minimum wage, to fundamental rights in work, like such as protection from discrimination, protection from violence and harassment, weekly rest for at least 24 hours consecutive, information on terms of employment and conditions, and the access for trade unions, it's a very important issue, the access to collective bargaining. And it also has some clauses on the protection of migrant workers. And one of the things that Manuela Tomei, the director of ILO, said at the adoption of the convention was that the new standards make clear that domestic workers are neither servants nor members of the family, but they are workers. And after today, they can no longer be considered second-class workers. So for us, and for domestic workers, it really has been a landmark convention. And as of yet, 32 countries have now ratified this convention.
Do you acknowledge that in the Netherlands, domestic workers are not really acknowledged as part of the economic activity that is happening in Netherlands?
Yes, unfortunately, the Dutch government has not yet ratified the ILO Convention 189. The Dutch government did vote in favor of the convention 10 years ago, but they said that it was mainly to improve the situation of domestic workers in other countries. And as a trade unionist, I was very disappointed in that reaction of our Dutch government, because the situation of domestic workers is not much better here. We have the Home Services Scheme, Regeling Dienstverlening aan Huis, which is a law that enables workers, domestic workers who work less than 4 days a week for a family or for a household, they are excluded from Social Security. And that is one of the reasons that the Dutch government has not yet ratified ILO Convention 189. So there's still a lot of work to do, yes.
Do you think it will be achievable for us to have a dignified way of being called employees in Netherlands? Because I know so many people have been exploited. Some of them have been cheated and they don't even know where to go and report or how to claim for their money.
Yes, I think it will be difficult. I must say that we've been working as a trade union for 10 years with our group, the Migrant Domestic Workers, as well. But I think it's one of the issues that we have to pursue once and once again, because it's domestic work is normal work such as every other job, and it should be paid as every other job. And I don't think it's explainable that in any country, but in a country as the Netherlands, that we exclude certain types of workers from Social Security and from pensions. So it is something we have to put forward.
In the countries where ILO is into existence, how is the scheme? How is it helping? Is it in any way conflicting with the policies of the countries, or it's helping in a way? Can you give us some information about that?
What I said earlier, 32 countries have ratified the ILO Convention. One of the examples is Belgium, where they have voucher systems for domestic work. It does need a subsidy from the government to make it work. And the ILO Convention doesn't make domestic work in one step a glorious place to work with high wages, etc. But it is a start, and it gives them basic social security rights. It gives them the minimum wage at least, and there are some countries where domestic workers also have access to schooling. But one of the other things that is problematic, and also in the Netherlands, and also for the type of workers that we are talking about today, the migrant domestic workers, the workers who are undocumented, the ILO Convention will probably make domestic work a formal sector to work in, but it doesn't necessarily mean that the position of undocumented workers will improve. But that is the second step we have to make to work on work permits, for example.
I understand on the 16th of June, it will be exactly 10 years since ILO is into existence. Is the Netherlands going to be part of it, or it's just going to turn away from it? How is the reaction for the Netherlands as regards the anniversary?
The next year, the Netherlands will have to report why they haven't ratified ILO Convention 189. I think we will do everything in our power to make sure that the government has a lot of explaining to do. They have been, the CEDAW committee, the Commission on the Elimination and on Discrimination Against Women, have repeatedly warned the Dutch government that they are acting discriminatory against women, because a lot of women workers are domestic workers. So we will do anything in our power to make sure that the Dutch government makes a few new steps to abolish the Home Services Scheme, and that they will ratify 189. But it has to be, I think we have to put up a fight, and I don't think we can do it alone.
So you will do it as a team, right?
Yeah.
Before I end up with you, can you tell me what you hope to achieve by the end of this evening? What are some of the things you think we will achieve by the end of this evening? Because I know so many people are viewing us from home, and I want you to tell us what you think we will achieve by the end of the evening, or even in future. How do you project this?
Well, I hope this can be the start of a new discussion on the dignity and the position and the labor rights of domestic workers. I think it's an issue that we haven't talked about enough. I think everyone was very disappointed that the Dutch government did not ratify ILO 189. So we had to regroup. And I hope that this evening will bring some new energy into the fight and the struggle that we will have to continue.
Oh, thank you very much. That has been Jessica van Rautenbach from Zoom. And next, let's watch a video clip that was recorded during the week against racism. And this was recorded for domestic workers to show what situation they go through before I invite the next guest.
Ik ben een migrant domestic worker. Wij, domestic worker, maken de huizen van anderen schoon. We zorgen voor ouderen en kinderen. We zorgen dat alles thuis goed loopt, zodat ons werkgever zelf kunnen werken en geld verdienen. Toen ik hier kwam, dacht ik dat Nederland een land was waarin iedereen gelijk was, waar niemand in hokjes wordt verdeeld. Maar elke dag zie ik een andere realiteit. Migrant domestic workers worden vaak gediscrimineerd met lagere lonen en soms zelf helemaal niet betaald. Ons werk wordt namelijk niet erkend. Dat maakt ons kwetsbaar in alles. We wonen in kleine kamertjes met grote huren en met een hoge borgsom die we nooit terugkrijgen. En veel van ons maken seksuele intimidatie mee, omdat een werkgever of huisbaas denkt dat wij, vrouwen, voor het grijpen zijn. Dat hoort niet. We doen fatsoenlijk en belangrijk werk. En we willen ook fatsoenlijk en goed behandeld worden. Ik organiseer mij als vrouw, als migrant, als huishoudelijk werker en als activiste samen met andere migrant domestic workers en activisten in de vakbond en andere organisaties om voor onze rechten op te komen. Migrant of niet-migrant, we zijn allemaal gelijk.
Welcome back from that short video. With me, I have Noor Hayati. Unfortunately, her elaborative information is going to be in Dutch, and there will be a translator via Zoom for people who do not speak Dutch. Welcome, Noor Hayati. Can you please tell me who is a domestic worker?
We doen belangrijk werk, maar onze positie is niet sterk. Als de
We do important work, but our position is not strong.
We zijn al heel lang actief om onze positie te verbeteren. We waren blij, trots 10 jaar geleden, dat de ILO-conventie aannam die de rechten van huishoudelijk werker erkende. We hebben intussen veel gedaan om die conventie bekend te maken. Meer dan 10 jaar zijn we actief binnen de FNV. Van alle huishoudelijk werkers in Nederland zijn wij de meest actieve groep.
We've been working towards our rights for a very long time, and we are happy to recognize the work that has been achieved through the ILO Convention. And we are happy to recognize what this has done for our rights. But under FNV, we also must recognize that we aren't quite there yet.
Can you please tell me what are the challenges and the problems that you are facing as undocumented people?
De ILO zegt dat het vak migrantworkers zijn die huishoudelijk werk doen. En de ILO zegt dat alle huishoudelijk werkers gelijk rechten moeten hebben. Maar toch zal ratificatie alleen de ongedocumenteerden niet helpen. Daarvoor moeten we ook werkvergunning krijgen.
We believe that ratification alone will not be enough to help us. We also need work permits. All domestic workers have rights, including undocumented peoples.
Do you think it's quite easy to get a work permit?
Ik hoop dat in Nederland gaat ratificeren van die ILO met die campagne. Hoop dat we zichtbaar worden onder onze situatie, niet alleen ons probleem is. Net als de ILO zegt, wij leveren een belangrijk aandeel in de economie door ons werk. De mensen van wie wij het huis schoonmaken, kunnen hun huis aan ons overlaten. Wij regelen alles. Vaak zorgen we ook voor ouderen, ook voor kinderen. Daarvoor kunnen anderen werken en geld verdienen. Ons problemen zijn daarom niet alleen ons probleem, maar ook van ons werkgever en van de Nederlandse samenleving. We hebben solidariteit nodig in de samenleving. We hopen dat ons bondgenoten ook doorgaan tot voor alle domestic workers, dus ook voor de migrant domestic worker. Verbetering is gekomen. We hopen vandaag ook dat jullie kunnen vertellen hoe we dat samen kunnen bereiken.
We are hopeful that the ILO campaign will push through and help us with the place of ratification. We offer a huge contribution to society. In the home, we can be trusted. We care for all. We care for the elderly. We care for your children, and we care for your homes. This means that our problems are your problems as well. And it is for this reason that we demand a certain solidarity. We believe that all domestic workers are workers, migrant or not. And we are very hopeful that as the process of this conversation continues, we will come to conclusions even on this evening.
What do you think are legal or policy solutions and changes that need to be implemented as regards to domestic workers?
Wij willen fatsoenlijk lonen en arbeidstijden. We willen vakantiegeld en sociale zekerheid als we ziek worden of als de werkgever ons plotseling niet nodig heeft. Sommige werkgever is als het niet nodig en dan gewoon zeggen, ik kan niet jou volgende week komen en dan moeilijk voor ons. Daarom we willen ook duidelijk afspraken kunnen maken met ons werkgever. We willen fatsoenlijk kunnen wonen. We willen een bankrekening kunnen openen, zodat we ons loon niet cash bij ons moeten dragen. We willen ondersteuning en bescherming krijgen als mensen misbruik van ons maken. En wij willen belasting ook betalen.
Thank you very much, Noor.
I'm just going to quickly translate what she said. We would like decent salaries. We would want work hours that are solid for us. And we also have a need for social security. Often we're in the type of situation where our employers say to us from one week to the next, okay, you're needed this week, but next week I might not need you. This creates a lot of insecurity and a lot of instability for us. So what we would need is consistency in our schedules. We would need a situation in which we have a bank account and access to a bank account. We want social security, and we too want to be able to pay our taxes.
Thank you very much, No, for this very beautiful contribution. And I have learned quite a few challenges and the problems that you are facing as and as domestic workers. For instance, I understand during the corona times, most of the domestic workers lost their jobs because everybody was at home. They were not having any income. And I understand some of the domestic workers are really paying rent. So it was really a very big challenge during the time, and the government did not come in to support the domestic workers. Yeah. So there was a very big problem. Even up to today, some of the domestic workers have lost their jobs. They literally not depending on any income, simply because there's really no law that protects undocumented people and domestic workers at large. Yeah. I would think if the government or the municipality or Netherlands as a whole would come up with policies that are really protecting domestic workers. I know, for instance, if you're working in a home and you fell and break your leg or so, it may be even very hard for you to access medical care. It may be very hard for you to report the problem because you fear to be deported, you fear to be persecuted or anything to mention. So the government of Netherlands should really acknowledge the existence of domestic workers. The government of Netherlands should really have laws or policies to protect the people. They are humans. We are humans like everybody else. Just because that we are doing domestic work, that does not mean we are less humans. Just because we are doing domestic work, that does not mean we cannot contribute to the economic growth of Netherlands. So I think there should really be stringent or strict policies that are really helping undocumented people and domestic workers as well. Thank you very much, Netherlands.
Thank you, Hidayah.
Noel Hayati. As we proceed, I'd like to call upon my next guest, who is seated on my extreme right, who is none other than Tesseche De Lang. Tesseche is a specialist for economic migration. Apparently, she is at the university in Nijmegen. Welcome, Tesseche. Before I start with you, can you please tell us what are the historical roots of the current migration laws and the so-called alien laws?
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, so that's a really broad question. And before I go into that, I just really want to applaud both you and Noor for the statements that you made and the point that you want to make here today, and something that I strongly support. And if we look back how we got here in this situation where people are sometimes irregularized, don't have a residence permit, might have had a residence permit in the past, but lost it for whatever reason. That's all because we have laws saying you can have a residence permit or you can have none of it. And I think for today, what is very important is that what I want to stress is that the situation that we are in is one of what I call regulatory neglect. I think the Dutch government is neglecting its regulatory obligations towards, like you said, people who are here, people who are people, and who are contributing to our economies. However, migration law stands in the way because we do not have legal migration pathways for people who have practical skills. We only have legal pathways for people who have highly educated skills. But we all know that skills are very important in our economies, just as brains, hands should be treated equally and equal important also in migration law. So legal pathways are missing. This is already since the 70s, 80s of the previous century that we've actually not had an entry route for people in practically skilled jobs. On top of that, we sort of closed the informal, formal grey economy with the so-called Linking Act at the turn of the century that came into force, the Koppelingswet, which sort of creates a border between the migrant and so many facilities and services in society. Noor, you said you wanted a bank account.
Yeah.
And this European law says that maybe you should have one. But then the bank needs to ask for your social security number. But there's social security. You need to be registered. You need to, and then there's this whole circus of laws that you have to, and you cannot go through them because you don't have, at the end of the day, the residence permit. So the Linking Act in practice is really a barrier to thinking forward. So even if the ILO convention would be ratified, the next step would be to look at the Linking Act or to work around the Linking Act. I mean, if you want to keep it, but come up with decent solutions for the people that we need. You said, I want a work permit. This would be a system which is actually also something that in Europe they're looking at this. So I'm not really talking about the history, Hidayah. I'm actually looking at the future. Because in the past so much has not been done. And how long have we been discussing this? I think I'm in this field of research as an academic now for 25 years. I don't think much has changed. So I'm sort of, this neglect, this regulatory neglect is really persistent. So moving forward, I'm looking at Europe. The European Commission is aware that we are moving from a battle for brains to like a struggle for skills. Europe needs skilled people, practically skilled people, care workers to care for elderly. We're getting gray. And we have few children, so who's going to take care of me? We need people for that. We need to be honest with ourselves and not deny that this is a need and that we need policies for that. So my main plea would be, maybe skipping ahead already, that we need this legal migration pathways. In addition, for people who are already here, regularizations are I think, called for. It's you see that a lot of countries in Europe have actually done that in response to COVID, where people who were awaiting the outcome of a procedure or people who were irregular were offered an opportunity to regularize so that they get access to what it is that they need access to and that they don't fear the situation that they're in, which gives stress and is unhealthy on top of the health risk that we have. It's not something that was on the table in the Netherlands. And again, I think that's an element of the regulatory neglect that we are facing. I can go on for ages. Maybe you want me to...
Let me just cut you a bit short, because I really find it very ridiculous that most of the time when calamity arises, like undocumented people in general, because I know most of the domestic workers and undocumented people are not really thought of. So like, now that we are talking about the vaccination phase, so there are so many undocumented people who would really want to be vaccinated, but what's the approach? And where is this information being given to people? So I find there's really scanty of information. We as Amsterdam City Rights, we always try to disseminate information to whoever we meet. Whoever needs this kind of information, but sometimes we don't really know the direct channels because they're not really platforms to access people. So I find the Netherlands has not really thought about us as humans. They are still looking at us as invisible people, but we are here, and we were here before, and we will still be here.
And there are people, one of my colleagues at the Radboud Medical Center, together with people at the Amsterdam Medical Center, we've just wrote a policy brief, and I will see that it's uploaded somewhere on the site, outlining what steps to take towards, for instance, vaccination, but also the testing, and that it is to be available to undocumented migrants as well. And it is so that the dokters van de wereld, huisartsenposten, but you are absolutely right. The information, you have to find it yourself or through the networks that you have, but it's not the government advertising that this is a service that will be offered. Same for the homeless. There will be a vaccine as for undocumented. It is being worked on as we speak to have that arranged.
I hope it really comes to pass, because there's also a lot of fake news that is happening around about the reactions from the vaccines. I had undocumented people are supposed to have a specific type of vaccination, so which I'm not really aware about. But this all goes back to how is the information disseminated to people. Once we don't have proper channels that information comes to us, then there will always be a problem, because some people are really blackmailing the vaccination. Others want to really be vaccinated, but because there's really no proper channel for people to have this kind of information. Yes. Tesha, how did it change the rights and permits of migrants in Holland as of present, as we see right now?
You mean due to COVID, or more general?
All in general, due to COVID and apparently what we see today.
Well, there's, I think, looking at the Netherlands, the changes are really, really small. So there is, for instance, a change of the Migrant Workers Act on the table right now in Parliament. And it says that it aims to be future-proof. And I'm quite critical of it, because it doesn't really change a lot, and it doesn't voice any vision of what this future labor market is going to be like. And, for instance, the skills that are needed can likely be far more practical skills than only the highly skilled that have been the focus of migration laws over the past years. Earlier I mentioned Europe. I think the European Commission has some interesting plans on the table for a broader access to the European labor markets. But what's also interesting is that it wants to review a directive which gives rights, labor rights also, to undocumented migrant workers. This is a directive from 2009 and nobody is really using it, but it says that there is this right to proper pay and that there must be a facility to complain. And in line with this, there are also European rules saying that this possibility to complain must be in such a way that people don't fear to complain. So like at the Dutch labor inspection, for instance, is often feared because they will just give you to the immigration authorities and they will not. They are there to fine the employer, to give sanctions, but not to help the worker. And there should be, and this is discussed at the European level, but I missed this discussion in the Dutch politics, that there should be a firewall between sanctioning employers and assisting, informing migrant workers of their rights. So that's typically something that it has been on the table forever, that this should happen, and I don't see it happening. So in that sense, I am a little bit pessimistic that the liberal atmosphere in the Netherlands, where the labor market demands prevail over the migrant workers' needs and rights. But who knows? I'm not giving up.
That's very good that we continue fighting for what really belongs to us. I really find this whole situation very exasperating in a way that we don't really feel protected. We really feel very neglected, and once this happens, there will be a lot of problems in society. I have a few testimonies from Bain. Bain says, whether people have papers or notes, everyone should be able to claim the same human rights, which I totally agree. The Netherlands should be a country free from exploitation, and in order to achieve this, it should be possible for undocumented migrants to work safely. First of all, the Netherlands should ratify ILO Convention 189. I think they should, really. I really think they should. Secondly, the Netherlands should enable a system similar to the Duldang system in Germany, in which rejected asylum seekers are able to work. I find this very disturbing because I know for a fact people in Germany are really working and they're contributing to the GDP of Germany, which has failed in Netherlands. Thirdly, the asylum policy in general must be overhauled as the current situation is in conflict with international human rights. The discretionary power must be reinstated. The Buitenschuld procedure must be adjusted so that it can actually work. The discouraging policies of IND must be changed, and there should be a radical policy and culture change at the IND immigration services. These are just a few concrete points, but there are many more. The bottom line should be that no human being is illegal, and we should all be entitled to the same basic rights and social benefits. I totally agree with all these points because, as we know for a fact, people who are having the Dublin claim from our viewers back home means these are people who have had other countries they have actually arrived in other European countries and they find themselves here in the Netherlands. The Netherlands does not really have a clear policy for undocumented people. As we speak on a daily basis, I receive so many calls from people who are looking for places to go to. Well, I also live in the shelter. I don't have a place I can take them to. But I find it very disturbing that the Netherlands has completely failed to house people because human right is a basic right and housing is human rights. Next, as part of my guests via Zoom will be Sana Matu of GL via Zoom, PVDA. Sana, can you hear me?
I can definitely hear you.
Thank you very much. We're glad to have you on this very beautiful evening. Can you respond to the conversation so far that Noel and Tesha have said?
Yeah, I've been listening and I've been writing, and I think it's the best way to spend my Friday evening together with a group of inspiring women talking about something we talk too little about in Dutch politics. So my name is Sana Matu. I'm an MP, member of Parliament for GroenLinks, the Green Left in English. And sadly, I must admit that we do not talk about the situation of domestic workers enough in national politics. The last 10 years, even though we ratified, the discussion has come to a halt. It's been a couple of years ago that we had reports and that the ministry has been trying to put efforts into improving the situation of domestic workers. And I think the message of the conversations you've had in this panel so far is something no one should disagree with. Wanting to have decent and dignified work for domestic workers. And I think we've said it before, and we keep saying it, that domestic workers are an important share of our economies. They're a backbone of our economies. They've made it possible also the improvement of the labor participation of other women. So it's also, as a feminist, a very important issue for me. I'm a new member of parliament. My colleague, Paul Smulders, has had a motion voted for in Parliament to look and to force the government to come up with the work and the rectification to improve the situation, because we believe that it has been halted for far too long. So it's something also on my agenda, and I agree. I feel the disappointment also that we've had in the conversation so far, but at the same time, I get a lot of hope from the stories you've been telling. People standing up saying, we need to talk about this. This is still going on. We feel shameful for the fact that this is going on. We should and we can do better. And it's something, and I'm not going to promise big things. Sometimes it's small things, but an evening like this to say we are thinking about this, we see that this is going on, and keep on fighting and getting attention for this issue is very important for us as GroenLinks.
Oh, thank you very much. How are the prospects for the laws and policy to be changed in a way that is supportive to domestic and undocumented workers in the Netherlands?
So in my opening statement, I already referred to the motion that was accepted during the budget debate, I think 2 years ago, by my colleague Bas Mulders. And we keep on waiting and asking for government to come up to report on what they're doing because it got a majority vote in parliament. I'm going to be honest. It's tough, and we fight for every little centimeter, or even less. But we did get it agreed in Parliament, so it means that we have to come up with solutions. And we've seen during Corona, we also saw the fact that this huge group of workers that's so essential for our economy was not protected in any ways. And we've seen the consequence of that. So that's an extra that was an extra emphasis to keep on demanding from government to come up with the plans and not only and to improve the situation of domestic workers.
Do you think there's a way we can build political pressure on our demands on this campaign?
So one of the things that I really like about your campaign, and I would encourage you to keep on doing, is I think a lot of people, also other workers in Solidarity, don't know what the situation is of domestic workers. Mm-hmm. And I think if you see what the consequences are, if you see what the situations in people have to work in, we saw this amazing, well, not amazing, the message was not amazing, but the very strong video that you showed us earlier in this panel. I think if as other workers you see what others have to deal with, that can help in making a fist together, and that's why I'm also very happy that the labor union is here as well, because we see this in a lot of sectors in the economy, and it's a reality that we have to face ourselves and not hide, and keep on making noise, keep on showing what the consequences are.
Oh, thank you very much, Senna. I understand that you are one of the very kind-hearted people who think about other people who are less privileged, and you talk about us in the chambers. It's really a great honor to be speaking to you. Back to Noor and Taisha. Could you have any contribution towards what Senna has said? Anything to add on? What do you think? Do you find there's authenticity in what she has said? Do you think there's really something being done?
Shall I go first?
Of course, you can go.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much. I guess any political pressure helps. The raising awareness just of co-workers, you mentioned maybe two responses. But I think of other workers, I think what's also very important, and I guess people in politics, members of parliament, can be employers too. So as the employers of the migrant domestic workers, I never see them. They're not united, and they are, in a sense, protected to have this relatively cheap access to somebody to clean their house. And that is actually one of the reasons why nothing is changing, because otherwise it would be too expensive. So that would be a question back to politics from me. What fiscal or the voucher system was mentioned earlier in Belgium. That would be one. And the other would be what's interesting is the mention of the Duldung in Germany. Germany is actually far ahead of us also in having legal pathways for care workers and for workers who would otherwise possibly be failed asylum seekers, like from the Western Balkan. But don't come as irregular migrants or failed asylum seekers, but can come to work. There's work that needs to be done, so they have an entry route for that with a work permit and a residence permit, etc. And I think politics needs to look into those possibilities for the Netherlands as well.
Noel, do you have something to say to Aden?
Wij, migrant huishoudelijk werker zonder papieren, worden geconfronteerd met twee hoofdproblemen. De eerste wordt huishoudelijk werk niet erkend als echt werk en daarom genieten we niet de arbeidsrechten en sociale bescherming en de andere werknemers genieten. En de tweede, wij arbeidsmigranten zonder papieren mogen volgens de wet niet werken. We doen een beroep de steun van de expert, de Nederlandse bevolking en de beleidsmaker om voor deze twee problemen een humane oplossing te vinden. Graag alsjeblieft.
Yes, I would like to share that there is two problems related to migrants having no papers in this situation. The first is that in this case, housework is not seen as real work, and therefore the fact that it is not seen as real work means that we are not given the same type of rights. That is the first problem. The second problem is that because we are owning no papers and not documented under the law, we are not working. So therefore, in that sense, we are also invisible. So because of these two problems, we ask that the policymakers now find a humane way to treat us, for this is not humane.
Thank you very much. No, do we still have Jessica with us via Zoom? Jessica, are you there?
Yes, I'm still here.
I would also want to have your contribution via the reactions that you have had from Noor, from Taysir and Sana. What do you have to say about them?
Well, first of all, thank you, Noor, for being here and sharing your story with us. I think that the contribution of our network, Migrant Domestic Workers, has been vital to the campaign. Without them, we could not have, well, we haven't achieved enough, but you have put it out there. We are not invisible was the chant that migrant domestic workers were shouting, and I think we need to hear it even louder. Yeah. Because luckily Senna is with us here today, and GroenLinks, Green Left has has made the motion, put a motion forward, and so that the parliament has to talk about it. But we need to have a majority in parliament to achieve anything, to abolish the regeling dienstverlening aan huis, the home services scheme, and to also to improve what Tesseltje has been talking about, work permits for undocumented workers. So we have a lot of work to do.
Oh, thank you very much, Jessica. Sana, back to you. You've had my guests and you inclusive of what they have to say. Could you please give us your final remarks about the whole evening, about the whole rights for undocumented people, because I find there's a lot of exploitation. It has been happening for years. And if we don't talk about it, if we don't do something about it, it will be going on and on and on. And the people who are supposed to help us are the people in chambers. And I'm so delighted to see that at least we have someone who really thinks with us, though we do not really interact on a personal basis, but what you're doing is really a great job. Can you give me your contribution about the whole agenda for tonight?
Yeah, and I think it's a combination of optimism and also struggle and a little bit of realism or cynicism that's gonna be a little fire for continuing this challenge and this fight. And I think a couple of things I want to say. The first thing is it's true. It's true that we don't only have to talk about the solidarity of workers, but we also have to talk about those that employ. And we see that in every issue on the labor market. Having rights, having collective, having social security together, it costs something, but it also gives us something. And choosing the cheap side is often in the long run, it's also expensive. And continuing to tell that inconvenient truth is important, and I think, and I applaud you for the campaigns you do. And I would say, please keep on going, keep on fighting, because it's important to hear these stories and also to challenge others about this inconvenient truth. What is also very true, I'm not gonna be optimistic about it. If you look at the political situation, it's hard. We don't have a majority. So I've talked already about the motion. So what we keep on doing is to keep on asking government to come up with plans for this group, to say these groups exist. These are workers in our country. They deserve decent and dignified work. What are we going to do about it? Yes, everything is complicated. Yes, it's hard. It's been a very long, a couple of years ago since Kalsbeek. We need action, and not to forget about it in the political agenda. And I'm going to be the first one to say that's not going to happen tomorrow. And it's something that you have to keep on going. And maybe the last one to end it positively, if you work together with those in politics, but also those in the street and the houses, those employees and employers that are willing to listen and share the same ideals. I have learned, and that's why I went into politics, that you only need a couple of persons to stand up to start a change. And sometimes it takes a really long time, but changes do happen. So I applaud you, and thank you so much for this amazing Friday evening.
Thank you so much. And now, just one last question for you. Is the chambers open for us to come and maybe bring a petition or to talk to some of the politicians? Because I know in the last concluded elections, which we didn't understand really very well. We don't really know what happened, who is in favor of undocumented people, who is against us. We don't know all this. Is there any opportunity that you could see that we could maybe carry a petition, or we would come as a group, or we could write to someone and express our dissatisfaction? Because so much is happening and we don't really know where to go to. Even the politicians who are voted into power, we don't know who is against us. Maybe I can approach someone who doesn't really want to hear an immigrant, or I can approach someone who is in favor of us. What are some of the advices that you can give that we could use to see that our voice is heard? Because trust me, it's not going to stop today. This is just the beginning. We shall continue fighting for the rights of each and everybody who is undocumented, who is a domestic worker, and whose rights are violated. But I also want you to help me understand what are some of the channels that I can use, because I know I have a voice. I know I can always speak to very many people who cannot easily speak what they are going through. But if you could help me find out what is the best way or the right channel to use for me to access the chambers.
That's a great question. So one, we're still dealing with the corona situation, so physical petitions are going to be hard. But my advice would be, and maybe Jessica can help out here, is first of all, I'm an MP and I have social affairs and employment in my portfolio, and we have a committee with members of all parties that do social affairs and employment. And I think it would be good to email the entire committee with the question that you want to offer the petition or invite for a conversation. That would be my first advice. And then on the website of Parliament, you can see who the MPs are in that committee. As you could find me, you will find also MPs of other parties. So next to inviting the committee, you could choose MPs of parties that you would want to talk to and email with a personal invitation and see who responds. Those would be my two points of advice. And I would definitely also contact Jessica, because I think the union has her ways and can help you also with which parties or MPs are maybe more willing to listen than others.
Oh, thank you very much, Sana. Back to my table, my guests at the table. Noor, can you please give us your closing remarks? What is your final verdict? What do you want to achieve after this evening? Where do you see this leading us to?
Ik hoop dat deze avond gaat iets voor migrant domestic worker. En ik hoop dat het niet meer moeilijk en respect naar mensen zonder papieren een migrant domestic worker.
I'm hopeful that this evening will produce a different vision towards migrant domestic workers, and that in the future there will be more respect, especially towards us undocumented workers, and that there will be a change in the tone. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Back to you, Taisha.
I would say sama sama, which means the same. I agree with Noor on what she said. and people who are not aware of well, the difficult position that migrant domestic workers are in are ignorant, and like I said, there is this sort of common ignorance to not respond to this because it sort of benefits the people who are in power. Yeah. Not to, and to look away. And I think we cannot keep looking away for years and years, as has been done in the past. Mm-hmm. So I do hope, and I'm positive, that there will be some changes. I mentioned the policy paper that I put out there. Right now, with my team in Nijmegen, we are also doing research into the impact of COVID on undocumented workers. So I hope that the research output will also help people in Parliament to make their argument to improve your situation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Teysa. It has been a very beautiful evening for me, because right from my guests, Noel Hayati and Teysa, there's quite a lot to learn, because in life, every day, each and every day, we learn so many things from one another. But I would say for a fact, there's really so much work that needs to be done. There's need for pressure. There's need for advocacy. There's need for resilience, because it's not just about us. It's not just about the domestic workers. It's about the people in society. Where do we begin from? First of all, it has to be with acceptancy, because I know very many people in the Netherlands have not accepted that undocumented people, refugees or migrants are here. First of all, it has to be with acceptancy. The more you accept that people are here, the more life will be better for you. Secondly, it has to do with the policy makers, because if you create policies that are not helping the people, there will be too much trouble. People will find themselves into situations that they are not meant to be. So the policies have to be at least in balance with the people living in the city or the people living in Netherlands. Thirdly, it's about not just looking or turning away. You have to know the situation is here. When situations or problems are there, they have to be solved. Once they are not solved, there will be danger. As we close down the night, I would like to thank our audience back home via Zoom. You are very wonderful people. Thank you for creating time to listen to us, to listen to our problems and challenges. I also want to thank the Pakhuisserswijker. It's such a great honor to be here this beautiful evening, talking to the nation, showing my dissatisfaction of what is happening to my people, our people, my friends, my counterparts. It's always a pleasure to be here. First of all, I also want to thank Amsterdam City Rights. They have made me who I am. They have made me the voice of these thousands of people who cannot really come out to speak, because with Amsterdam City Rights, we have really achieved a milestone. With Amsterdam City Rights, young as we are, 3 years into existence, we are very vibrant young people. We have brains, we have talent, we have skills. So I'm very, very happy to be part of the team. And also, there's not so much in life that we can do unless we work as a team. Because personally, I would love to see everybody living amicably in Holland. Everybody to be able to see the doctor anytime they want to see the doctor. You don't know what it means for you to have a toothache and they tell you you have to wait for 6 months for you to see a dentist. Really? Yeah. Is that humanity? Is that human dignity? I think there's really so much that needs to be worked upon. And also, for this very great evening, I would like to call upon all the well-wishers and people who wish good for undocumented people, and also people who wish good for domestic workers, because I know they do a very wonderful job. If only they are acknowledged, they can pay taxes. If only they are accepted into society, they can own a bank account. I mean, it's It's not too hard. It's not too hard to give someone a bank account. It's just an account. They're going to pay taxes. They're going to remit funds on this account, and then the government will benefit from it. But because simply someone does not have a simple paper, you make life very hard for these people.
Yes.
Lastly, I call upon everybody to follow the website of the Pakhuis Vyper and this event. You can also watch this program via the website for Pakhuis Vyper. Also, if you would like to support more of these programs that are made here at Pakhuis, you can donate via Pay As You Like on the website, or you can use the QR code. Thank you very much for listening to us. It has been a wonderful evening. Hope to see you next time.